Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. This is Kalina from Chaos Group and today I'm going to show you V-Ray 3 for SketchUp. This is a completely new product that would change and renew the way you work with SketchUp. Over the years, V-Ray has become an industry standard. And nowadays, 92 of the top 100 architectural companies in the world use V-Ray on a daily basis. Which makes it another surprise. I'm super excited to show you the latest development when it comes to V-Ray for SketchUp. This software is aimed at people who don't want to spend so much time on rendering settings and technicalities, but still want to have beautiful renders. Those of you who are interested in customizing a little more will find that also to be very easy here. During this whole webinar, my colleagues are here with me. So at any point, if you have a question or something is unclear to you, feel absolutely free to type it in the GoToWebinar chat panel and I'm sure they'll answer. V-Ray for SketchUp is very easy to learn and work with, which makes it fast. Not only in the rendering, due to some background optimizations, but also in the workflow. And in the end, this is the production-proven power of V-Ray. In today's webinar, I'll start by introducing you to the new user interface and rendering possibilities of V-Ray for SketchUp, and then continue in a more workflow-based scenario where I'll go over topics like lighting, materials, geometry, denoising, virtual reality, and so on. All of this would be in order to give you not only the new tools and features, but also give you an idea how they can improve your everyday workflow. For this presentation, I'll be using a PC with an Intel i7 processor, 6 cores, 12 threads, 32GB of RAM and 2 graphics cards, an NVIDIA GTX 707 and a Quadro P5000. This is just for your information. And in the end of this webinar, I want to hear from you. I'll give you some more information on where you can get V-Ray for SketchUp, test it out, and give us your opinion. We would love to hear what you think, and I'm absolutely sure that you will fall in love with this product. And let's start with the thing that everybody sees when they open a new software, the user interface. Going into SketchUp, you can find here V-Ray in two places. One would be in the Extensions tab V-Ray, where you find some Create shortcuts and utility options. But also, there is the V-Ray toolbar. The V-Ray toolbar is automatically installed when you install the software. It's divided into three main categories, being geometry, lights, and rendering. And this first icon here opens the V-Ray Asset Editor. This tool allows you to control, let's say, 99% of everything V-Ray in SketchUp. The V-Ray Asset Editor itself is also divided into categories. In this case, we have four: materials, whites, geometry, and settings. And in each part of those, you'll find an arrow on the right. The arrow on the right opens the additional settings. Here you'll find options that are not so much used every day or are little advanced changes. Here will be also the geometry settings and light settings. In the middle panel, however, you'll find the mostly used settings. Then, if we go to the materials part, only here we have an arrow on the left. The arrow on the left opens the material library. The material library is one of the highlights of this release. I'm going to speak more about it when I go to the materials part of this webinar, and I just wanted you to know where it is. Since this would be the main UI used not only in this presentation, but in your workflow with SketchUp, let's go into the rendering options. Those are the types of rendering engines you'll find in V-Ray for SketchUp. So let's go and check them out. Going into SketchUp, if you go into the Settings tab, then on top you'll find the renderer options. Here you can pick which type of image sampler you want to use. By default, it would be interactive, meaning that whatever change you make in the scene, it would be visible in the rendering instantly. From then on, you can go into production mode by disabling interactive, which turns on progressive. The progressive image sampler is a new type of image sampling for V-Ray for SketchUp, And basically, like the interactive, the image gets better over time. But here, you can control this one from the quality slider you see here, and also by time. Both progressive and interactive can be done on the GPU. So you can render on your graphics card both types of rendering. But if we disable progressive, we go into bucket mode. The bucket mode is also controlled from the slider here. Let's start exploring those. And since this would be an early stage of the design, early stage of the concept, we would probably not have materials already created. So what I'll do is enable material override. This allows me to add one flat color or a material on top of everything, and in this way I can concentrate more on the illumination, on the concept, and also the rendering would be faster because we have just one material. So enabling interactive as it would be by default and starting to render. We have our image, and of course over time it would get better and better, but as I mentioned, we can do changes and see the result instantly in the frame buffer. I'll be using interactive rendering during this whole presentation, so I'll just continue with the other types here. Okay, stopping this one, and if I enable GPU acceleration, now V-Ray will render on my graphics card. Whatever graphics card you have, V-Ray will automatically detect it and start rendering on it. From then on, we can go into production mode, and let's disable material override for that to see some materials. And here I can go into progressive. Like this, it would be on the graphics card, and if I disable this one, I'll use the CPU. Progressive image sampler can be controlled by the quality here. So setting it to draft means that V-Ray would reach a draft threshold and stop rendering then. Another advantage of the progressive image sampler is that you can pick the global illumination presets you want to use. Great thing to know about the progressive rendering is you can also control it by time if you like. From enabling the option here in Ray Trace, where you find some additional settings for rendering, you can control progressive rendering by time. So if you have just 2 minutes, you can set this one to 2 minutes. It will give you the best quality for 2. But in our case, we use the draft rendering preset, and here is our result. Same thing we can do with bucket rendering. I'll just disable progressive, and again draft and render. Here also, not only you take advantage of the global illumination engines, you can also go into more customized settings over here. And if you need even deeper control than that, you can just click on this icon and quite a few options for your preferences. Besides this, of course, we can control all of the quality just from the slider here, and that's exactly what I'll do, continuing with a more high quality render, which let's say medium, a bigger resolution, Full HD. Okay, and then to make things faster, I'll use the V-Ray Swarm. The V-Ray Swarm is distributed rendering for V-Ray for SketchUp. Basically, V-Ray detects all of the machines that are in your network and have Swarm enabled. So this can be rendering, a dedicated rendering farm, your colleagues' computers, or any machine that basically has Swarm on it. V-Ray will detect it and use it for distributed rendering. Of course, more machines rendering one image means that the image would be rendered much faster. Then I control how many of those machines I want to use. From the slider here, 0 meaning that I will use none of them, while 100% meaning that I will use their full potential. And render. You can see here the current usage of the machines connected to my swarm. And if you want to monitor them more in depth, you can just click here to automatically open the monitoring page. So here you can see how many machines I have connected to the swarm. And honestly, it's quite a beautiful view. So in this way, you can render the image much quicker, of course, than on one machine. This is very easy to set up, as you can see, and you can use them on as many machines as you have available. Continuing from there, now that we have covered the user interface and rendering options, let's go into the more workflow-based part of this presentation, and our first topic would be lighting. V-Ray is a great tool for simulating real-world illumination in a 3D environment. For this webinar, I've prepared an exterior where we would use the physical sun and sky system to recreate the real-world sun and sky, and then use a physical camera to control this. Then I'll show you some additional goodies like the aerial perspective. Let's check out the scene I've prepared. And here it is. You can see this is a Mediterranean sort of an exterior. And first thing you may notice that we have a lot of plants here. All of those plants are proxies. The proxies are a great way of showing such detailed geometry in the viewport without slowing us down. I just wanted to mention that. From then on, let's continue with illumination. You know that when you open SketchUp, by default you have a sun already created. V-Ray takes this sun, calculated as a V-Ray sun, and renders with it. While we do the calculation as a V-Ray sun, not only is this one much more customizable, but also it gives us a better, more realistic representation. All of the lights, including the sun, can be found in the asset editor under lights. Let's render. And you can see we have the illumination coming only from the sun and the sky. The way we would move those is the same way we would move the sun in SketchUp, from the shadows panel. Here, in this particular scene, I've used the plugin called Solar North to change a little the axis of the sun, but besides this, we can control it from the shadows panel of SketchUp itself. Okay, let's try maybe an early morning. Or maybe a sunset. And when we are happy with the position of the sun, we can start customizing it due to our needs. When I open the right arrow in the light part, I see all of the sun options. By default, it will be using Cosec Sky, the latest sky model of V-Ray. And an important thing to know here is that the intensity controls both the intensity of the direct sun illumination and the sky. If you want to go custom, separate the sky from the direct illumination, you can always use a model like CIA. This means that if I lower the intensity, all of the illumination would be lowered. One way of controlling this would be here from the sun, but in a moment we will go into the physical camera, which is the much more right approach when it comes to controlling illumination. Something I want to show you here is the ground albedo color. The ground albedo color controls the ground or the color of the horizon. Basically, this gray here is this gray here. So by changing this color, I can change a lot of the atmosphere of the picture. Let's make it a little more romantic with this orange. Or in this case, since I want to believe we see the sea outside of this terrace, let's make it blue. Have in mind that this color will affect the GI a lot, so be careful when you choose it. If you want to control the amount, how much you see of this color there, the ground albedo color, you can go with the blend angle or horizon offset. Then, after I like this blue, let's go into the camera and see how we can control the illumination from there. Camera can be found in Settings, Camera. There are two ways of controlling the camera here. One of them is by the exposure value. Just by changing this number, we change the overall exposure of the whole image. This, of course, can be combined with the white balance. By setting a color here, this is one way of controlling the white balance. Just so you know, you can also do that as a post effect from here, the color corrections, white balance. I'll speak more about the color corrections later on today. I just wanted you to know that there are two ways of changing the white balance of your render. But besides the exposure value, if you want to control the camera like a real world DSLR camera and use all of the shutter speed, f-number, values and so on, you can just click on this icon here and have all of those. A great advantage of using the exposure value though is that it works beautifully with the depth of field toggle. So just like this, I can enable depth of field and we'll start seeing some blurring in the rendering. I'll make the defocus value higher, so it's much more visible. The defocus value controls the amount of depth of field in our scene. Now, we see it very clearly in the frame buffer itself. The only thing left is to set the focus point. Now it's on these flowers near us, so let's make it somewhere more nice, like maybe here. One way of doing that would be just by setting the focus distance to a number. Of course, this works if you know the exact distance between the camera and the object, but a much easier approach would be going in Pick Focal Point and then clicking on the object in the scene you want to be on focus. From then on, of course, you can customize with the distance. Okay, now that we are happy with the focus, I think I'll just lower the defocus value so we have much more realistic kind of a vision for this exterior. And as easy as that, you can set up your illumination and camera. But I promised I'll show you something additional, and this would be the aerial perspective. The aerial perspective is powered up from environment aerial perspective. This is an overall volumetric effect that basically simulates the thickening of the air when you look far, far away. It can be used as an atmospheric haze, as a fog, as whatever you like it. It's very easy to set up. Basically, from the visibility range, if I write a lower number, this will bring it closer to the camera and make it more visible. And then I have the height, which the name explains pretty much, so I can just drop it down. Using the aerial perspective, you can add a lot of additional detail and atmosphere to your renders. And this is the way how we use real-world illumination, let's say. But what about artificial lights? V-Ray supports all kinds of artificial lights, and I'm going to show the image-based lighting done using the dome light. The dome light is a sphere we create around the scene, project an image on it, and use this HDRI image to illuminate the scene. Not only this is very easy, but it gives us great shadows, great reflections, and very versatile illumination. And then we'll combine all of this with artificial custom lights that you can do for all kinds of setup in your scene. Okay, going into SketchUp itself. Let's illuminate the scene using a dome light, but first I'll turn off the sun. We create the dome light from the lights panel of the toolbar and drag it anywhere in the scene. Okay, here we have the dome light. By default, it will have a texture loaded, so let's render with that one. You can go and change this texture to a custom HDRI at any point. You can even go and take an HDRI image of the place the building would be built. Okay, let's disable the aerial perspective. We don't need it for now. And we have the illumination coming from the dome light. I can change its intensity or, of course, go and change the camera settings. You can see that the dome light is not only affecting the illumination, but also works as a background. Then I can go and rotate it to suit better the needs of this scene, which can be done either from here in the UV panel, or I can just go lock the dome light orientation to the gizmo and rotate it in SketchUp. Okay, selecting and rotating. The interactive rendering comes very in handy in these situations because we see what we do instantly. So this is how you create image-based illumination in V-Ray. But besides this, there are many artificial lights you can use for a custom setup. All of those have shortcuts here, so you have the plane light, sphere light, spotlight, IS light, where you can load pre-made architectural lights, IS lights, even straight from light manufacturers. Then we have the Omni light, the dome light we just used, and this grayed out one is the mesh white. The mesh white is a new addition to the lights family and allows us to make any object, any piece of geometry, a light. Let's go and select those garden lights here. And I need to just select the geometry and click on the mesh light. Now this object is starting to emit light. But even in this stage of rendering, you can see that this is very, very dark. So we can change it by going into the asset editor and changing the intensity of this mesh light. Or what we can do is go here on top in the toolbar we have a tool called Adjust White Intensity. When I click on this one, nothing will happen. But if I go over the light, I can see its intensity. So now I can left mouse click, hover it, and drag forward. In this way, I'm changing this light's intensity. Let's select the region to see it better. So you see how much brighter this light shines now. Of course, I can do the same thing just by dragging it down and lowering its intensity. To go out of this mode, I can just press space and go back to select. But this tool allows you to change the intensity and do the proper illumination for your scene, even in the viewport, without going into the asset editor. From then on, you can combine all combinations of lights together: artificial, sun and sky, even a dome light. All of this in order to give you the exact illumination you want for your project. And now we've covered lighting, so let's proceed to the next part of our workflow-based presentation and go into materials. Shading and materials can be super easy in V-Ray for SketchUp, and as might as well say it, fun. Here we have one of the highlights of this release, being the material library. The material library has over 500 materials in it that are pre-made, ready to be rendered. So basically you just drag them, drop them in your scene, and start rendering. From then on, of course, you have a few new materials and new textures that allow you to go into greater levels of customization and create really complex custom shaders. I want to show you how easy we can use the library to shade the scene from scratch. In this scene, I have no materials. You'll see that everything is gray. And I want to start shading it. From then on, opening the dust editor, in the materials part, first of all we have the swatch. The swatch allows us to see the material without even rendering. So every change we make in this material would be visible in the swatch. And you'll notice more of this when I start dropping materials from the library. This means that you can use the swatch not only to check materials, but you will see them the same way as you would when they are rendered, making it very optimized. On the left, as I mentioned, is the material library. You can drag and drop it in any way you like. I'm using this setup to show you the materials better. They're all divided into categories, and again, those categories contain more than 500 materials. So you can pick just the type of material you want to use and drop it in the scene. Just like this, we can start shading this whole thing. And let's start with, let's say, the table. Why not go for this white room with a little dark furniture kind of a view and go into wood to pick some dark wood for the table legs. You can see that the swatch updated, even the preview is different. Those are mostly linked to the materials, but you can control them from here as well. We also see the same material in the frame buffer. Okay, for the top of the table, I'll maybe go with something black, not slippery, like rubber. You can find, I think, plastic. Okay. Okay, I think I'll use the same plastic for the boats here, since I want them to be black. Then for the laptop, we can go with a little more grayer rubber for the bottom part. And maybe something shiny on top. Okay, for the lamp, I'm also thinking about something shiny. I'll use a metal material for those caps of the table as well, for a little accent. Then for the bookshelf, maybe some light wood to give it a more fresh feeling. Metal for those in the back, aluminium. And now the only thing left is the floor, the wall, and the glasses. For the floor, I think I'll go with some New York feeling concrete floors, very urban. And for the wall behind, why not go with something white and fresh? We can go into the wall paint and wallpapers. But actually, I'm thinking more like bricks. If you don't like the tiling of some of the materials, you can change it in one or two ways. One would be selecting the material, going to the right, here, and changing the tiling of each individual texture assigned to the material. But another would be just picking SketchUp's material editor, going into Edit, and changing the tiling from here. So in this way I actually got a little bigger bricks, which was the look I was going for. And then let's add some color for the ceramic cups here. Ceramic and porcelain. Okay, this one looks shiny enough. And just like this, like covering a book, we can shade the whole scene. From then on, you can use the library not only as finished materials, but also as a starting point for other materials. What I mean by this is I can take this ceramic I just created, this porcelain from the library, and go in quick settings and change its color, for example. Or, of course, if you want more advanced control and more complex shaders, you can go in here. This can happen not only with the materials from the library, but you can also create absolutely new materials from here. There are a few new ones, including the blend, bump, car paint, stochastic flakes, subsurface scattering, and hair materials. I strongly encourage you to test those out. But besides this, if you want to work with layers, you can also find those here. Then you can see how easily we shaded our scene. This is just one way of using the library. I've did some experiments with this scene, and you can see some different shading all of this coming from the same library we just dragged and dropped some materials. So here is one setup, another, and you can see how much the feeling changes just by changing the materials. Now, after lighting and then materials, what comes next? Geometry. V-Ray has some great way of procedurally optimizing geometry. Not only it's easy to manage in the viewport, but also to give you the power to create some more complex pieces. One of these geometry optimizations are the proxies, which I mentioned in the lighting scene where we had all of those plants. Of course, proxies are not limited to plants. You can use everything as a proxy, where you have the low poly preview in the viewport, and in render time, render detailed, beautiful geometry. Then, a completely new feature here is the grass and fur. The grass and fur is a procedural way of creating, as the name here suggests, grass, fur, all kinds of fluffy objects with such type of geometry. This is very easily done, and I'll use the same scene to create a carpet. I'll start by creating the base geometry of the carpet, just a plane with little thickness, and I'll make this one a group. Then let's position it just below the table. I'll just make it a little thicker so it would stand on top. Okay. And go into camera mode. And here we have our carpet geometry. So now all I need to do is select it and click on the fur icon on top. And if we render now, we have a fluffy carpet. In this case, I'm creating a carpet, but I want to show you that it can be used for grass, so I'll apply a grass material on top so you can see how it works. From the library, I'll select ground, grass. By default, the fur will take the material of the plane, but there was no material here, and that's why it was just white. This is by creating grass by applying the grass material from the library, but there is also a custom optimized for such geometry material called hair here that is optimized not only to be rendered fast for such types of geometry, but also to have correct translucency. But I just wanted to show you that even from the library, just by creating a standard grass material, you can get quite a good result. Although this looks really nice, let's go back into making it a carpet. Let's start with the fabric material. Let's use this one since it has some texture. And I'll just select the region to show you better what's going on in the scene. So here we have our fur, and now procedurally we can change it to look more like a carpet. All the geometry is found here in the geometry part of the asset editor, fur. So let's start by changing the length. A little shorter. Okay, maybe not that short. Then we can make it a little less thick for it to be more fluffy. We can bend it more since people have been walking on top of this carpet, sitting. And then we can add a curl. And this is how we make a carpet. This is one way of very easily, procedurally creating this type of geometry. And you can see that since it's not visible in the viewport, it won't slow our navigation there. Continuing with geometry optimizations, another big one is the clipper. The V-Ray clipper is very much like SketchUp section plane. It basically allows us to cut through geometry without destroying it. This way we can achieve more artistic views or just see what's going on inside. By default, even when you create a SketchUp section plane, it will be read as a V-Ray clipper. Let's do that. I'm putting this one in a group because I wanted to cut only through the glass. Okay, random. All of this kind of geometry, as I mentioned, would be found here. And here we have the section plane. It's read as a V-Ray clipper because this gives us more customization. We can use the object material or go with a custom material. Now you see this red where the section plane is cutting. You can also cut lights. But another thing about the V-Ray clipper is that it can be a custom mesh. So it doesn't need to be just a section plane, it can be any mesh you want. Let's do exactly that. I'll go into this group, delete the section plane, and hide the custom geometry I'll be using for the clipper. So this abstract, let's say, box would be my clipper. If I render it now, of course we will see that we have an abstract box in our scene. But if I just select it and go on the clipper icon here, now this would be working as a clipper. I can do the same customizations and select a material, for example. This allows you to be artistic as possible, and of course the exclude list would work the same way. You just need to put it in a group. I think the idea here is pretty clear. I want to show you a finished image done in this way so you get a better example. Okay, here is my image. Same building, just in a different stage, done with the same abstract box clipper. Now that I've showed you the geometry optimizations as well, I want to show you a way to speed up your rendering without losing quality, which would be denoising. What's the idea behind denoising? Basically, we render the scene at one stage and then on top, as a post-process, we denoise. In this thing, V-Ray removes all of the noise but keeps the detail. So we get better renders for less time, because denoising is actually much faster than waiting for the render itself to achieve that quality. Denoising is like building a house. If you have a good structure, if the rendering is good, the house, the denoise, would be strong on top. So you still need to spend some time rendering. But then if you spend some time rendering and you denoise on top, you get great quality. I want to show you exactly that. And here I have a building. So what I will do is open the settings, go into right arrow, render elements. I'll speak more about render element in a few minutes, I'm sure. So for now, I'll just go and add denoiser. Then lower the quality of the rendering, go into progressive so we see the render right away. Okay, maybe just a little better than draft. And render. V-Ray is rendering the image, and when it finishes, it will start denoising it. The denoising will automatically be done on your graphics card, which makes it much faster. This is a background process, so you don't need to set up anything additional. So our rendering is done and the denoising, I'm sure, as well. If we go into the denoiser render element, which is here, you'll see the result coming from the denoising. Let's compare those two. This is the original rendering, a very quick one, and this is the denoised version. You can see what a big improvement denoising on top of this one is, and the detail is still saved. This was a very quick render. Let's see how long. Okay, 47 seconds. But I've pre-rendered the image in a better result to show you that you need some decent rendering, but with the denoising on top you can achieve great results. Here is my 7 minutes render of the same building, again progressive. So this is the original 7 minutes rendering, and this is denoising on top of the 7 minutes. So denoised, original, and you can imagine how much time it would take us to get to this result just from rendering. So in the end, this can make the quality better and save you a lot of time. From then on, we are done with the denoising, we already have the beautiful picture, we can just make it better. In the V-Ray frame buffer itself, you can do basic color correcting. So without any third-party software, you can just do some color corrections in the frame buffer itself. You also have the possibility to add lens effect, and after this, if you still want to do some advanced color correcting, you can extract the information from specific render elements. I'll show you this on this building we have rendered, and this button here opens the color correction options. So from here I can go start changing my image in order to make it more beautiful. The white balance one I showed you in the beginning. You can even change the exposure from here and have a little more control using the color balance. And just like this, you can completely change the feeling of the render, make it much better. You can also save those color corrections, load them, and exchange them with colleagues or have your own personal library of color corrections. This personal library of color corrections can even be the history. So here I've saved some images with different color corrections, so I can go right click, load color corrections. And you can see just by changing those how much of the feeling of the building changes. Another thing we can do is add lens effect. From here, I'll just go to the RGB and I can add bloom, glare, okay, here is the glare. And then customize them in any way I want. So just in the frame buffer, you can really make your image pop. And then, as I mentioned, V-Ray for SketchUp supports full list of render elements. So you can just pick and add from this list if you want to extract specific information about image like lighting, shadows, reflections, and so on. An interesting new render element part of this release is the extra texture one. The extra texture one, which I've added before on the image I've pre-rendered, allows you to add a dirt map where you can render ambient occlusion inside the extra texture. From then on, of course, you can extract all kinds of information. And now that we are done even with the color correcting after rendering, I want to show you a few additional goodies that come with V-Ray 3 for SketchUp. One of the things I want to show you is how easily you can create virtual reality images in V-Ray. Okay, it's not one click, it's a few clicks, but those clicks make it really easy. Let's go back in the first scene we started with. Okay, I'll delete this clipper and lower the camera so we are a little more on human eye level, a little more in front of the building. Okay, so let's leave the camera here and I'll go to the rendering settings, camera, and here I can pick two types of virtual reality cameras. The spherical panorama will create a sphere around the camera and render on that sphere. Then the image is ready to be copied and pasted on all kinds of virtual devices. Another way is the cube map. The cube map will create 6 images, top, bottom and sides, which together combined will create this virtual reality camera. And then again, I can copy and paste this image on an Oculus Rift, Samsung Gear, even a Google Cardboard with the correct phone. No stitching, no post-processing, just ready to copy and paste. Both images allow you to use stereoscopy, which is the red and the blue channel, to create the 3D depth. In this case, I'll just render a cube map here to show you what I mean. You may notice that the resolution is already set to the correct aspect ratio, so all I need to do now is press render. Automatically everything is scaled, so here we have the front view we set up the camera to. This will just give you an idea what's going on in the scene, because for virtual reality, of course, we need much more detailed scene. I've already pre-rendered a version of this one with much more detail, so let me show you this one. Okay, here is the same building, rendered in a cubic map with stereoscopy. And this is how this one looks if you look 3D into it. Basically, you can look around, see what's going on in the scene, and imagine if you have the VR set on your head. From then on, you can also export a V-Ray scene where you have the geometry and the materials baked inside, and import this one in V-Ray for Max, V-Ray for Maya, or just render it in standalone. This is just an ease when it comes to heavy pipelines and companies that work with different softwares at one place. We went from the new user interface rendering through all stages like lighting, materials, geometry, denoising, and color correcting. All of this comes with online licensing. So you don't need a dongle, you don't need any hardware thing, you can just go get it and use online licensing for it. And there is a free trial available. It's a full functioning software that I strongly encourage you to go test and show us the great results you can do. So go to chaosgroup.com, get a free trial of V-Ray for SketchUp, test it out, and we'd love to hear your feedback. But most importantly, we would love to see your renders, your imagination in action. And if you're wondering about licensing, the idea is the following. You can get the workstation license, which contains one user interface license and one render node. And from then on, you can continue getting more render nodes for rendering with the swarm. The render nodes are universal, so you can use them across all V-Ray platforms. All of this is available with hardware and online licensing. And for pricing, here is a little more information, but I strongly encourage you to check more on chaosgroup.com, or better yet, contact your local reseller or sales@chaosgroup.com. Then, a few additional websites you can check are docs.chaosgroup.com, which is the official help index of Chaos Group. It's constantly updated, and there you can find a lot of detailed information about all of this. And our YouTube channel, where you find some tutorials, some interesting videos. We always do a video when we have a new release to keep you up to date. So, as they say, subscribe to that one. And most importantly, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for being part of this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you fell in love with the software. I would love to hear your opinion, as I mentioned, but most of all, thank you so much for being part of this. See you next time. Bye bye.